Հարգելի բարեկամներ, Սփյուռքի ձայնը հեռուստահանդեսը դարձյալ ձեզ հետ է։ Այսօրվա իմ հաղորդումը ուզում եմ սկսել ձեզ ներկայացնելով անցյալ շաբաթ մեր համայնքում տեղի ունեցած միջոցառումները նվիրված հայոց ցեղասպանության 97-րդ ամյակին։
Every year on the eve of April 24th at New Jersey's St. Vartanantz Apostolic Church took place a Requiem service commemorating the 97th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. The Requiem service was led by Reverend Vache Bozoyan with members of the Armenian diaspora and guests in attendance. Following the annual tradition, the Requiem service continued outside next to the memorial statue in honor of the genocide victims, joined by clergy, attendees, and scouts. This tradition has been performed exactly on the day of April 24th for decades and observed by the clergy, parishioners, and guests. After the Requiem service, the program, which was organized by the Armenian National Committee of New Jersey, continued in the church's auditorium. The program started with the American and Armenian anthems performed by Aragak Choir. Following the performance, Ani Chaglazian made the opening remarks. Hamaskain's Nairi Dance Ensemble performed a dance skit on the theme of the Armenian Genocide. The most important highlight of the event was a presentation by the Turkish historian Dr. Ugur Utmet Ungur, an assistant professor at the Department of History of Utrecht University and the Institute of War and Genocide Studies in Amsterdam. He discussed his recent book, Confiscation and Colonization, The Young Turk Seizure of Armenian Property. During his speech, he summarized some of the arguments and conclusions from his book, including detailed descriptions of specific cases of seizure of Armenian property during the dark days of genocide. During this impressive lecture, Professor Ungur presented a slideshow which included names and pictures of specific Armenian individuals who were successful business owners in various industries and who've been killed and their property confiscated. Professor Ungur concluded his lecture by stressing the fact that the true extent of theft of Armenian property is still impossible to calculate, since the documents held in Ankara concerning the land confiscated during the genocide still remains classified.
Now, the destruction of the Ottoman Armenians denuded a vast economy of its owner. You can imagine it. This is an enormous population. There were farms, businesses, factories, workplaces, ateliers. There was movable property, immovable property. In some cities, such as Dikranagert, which I studied, in the entire sections of the bazaar were confiscated. And the abandoned property commissions then virtually gave all the property to Turks.
Next speaker was Mr. Ken Hachikian, the chairman of the Armenian National Committee of America. Mr. Hachikian has been involved in the grassroots capacity building and advocacy efforts with both Congress and the administration. Mr. Hachikian discussed important subjects, including the critical importance of the pursuit of the return of Armenian churches, schools, and hospitals in Turkey. He discussed the national rights, such as the loss of life and property, and legal avenues available to address these issues in courts, as well as what comes next in terms of reparation for the Armenian genocide.
The Armenian National Committee of America is pursuing a broad array of issues, as it normally is on our Washington agenda. Genocide recognition, of course. We've introduced a resolution into both the House and the Senate, calling upon the United States to recognize the Armenian genocide. We pursue the economic prosperity of Armenia through pursuing additional foreign aid for Armenia, Millennium Challenge accounts, and importantly, foreign aid to Karabakh, which really needs the money to develop its economy. Jabak is an area where Armenians have lived for hundreds of years and where they have been persecuted by the Georgians and where they need political autonomy and where they need economic assistance. And we've started a new initiative to help the Jabaksi Armenians get jobs and to develop their economy. Finally, we have a new initiative this year that was actually started last year, which is pursuing the issue of reparations. Of course, we've talked about reparations for a long time, but we've specifically initiated an effort to call upon Turkey to return Christian church properties. Approximately 3,000 churches were confiscated by Turkey at the time of the genocide. Over 2,000 of them belonged to Armenians. And this issue has gained a great deal of traction. It passed in the House Foreign Affairs Committee by a vote of 43-1. It passed overwhelmingly on the floor of the entire House We've now introduced the same resolution to the Senate. And in response to that, lo and behold, the Prime Minister of Turkey, Erdogan, issued a proclamation saying that properties confiscated under a 1936 decree would be returned to the foundations that owned them. The Armenian National Committee consists of 50 local committees throughout the country, organized into our East and West Coast traditional communities, and we call upon each and every one of you to support our activities. And on May 20th, there'll be a telethon to provide financial support for our activities, and we appreciate your assistance.
What inspires you to write the book on confiscation and to begin research on the Armenian genocide?
Well, I grew up in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands has a history of genocide, of course, in the Second World War and the Holocaust. So we were always taught the Holocaust in high school, also in primary school. And when I went to university, I read a book comparing the Holocaust to also other genocides, and then I read about the Armenian genocide. That's how I became interested. I grew up among Assyrians, and hearing their stories, of course, also got me interested and sensitized towards this subject. So I decided to study the region where the Assyrians are from, actually, the southeastern Turkey, Diyarbakir, and that kind of got me interested. And, you know, one thing leads to another, and before you know, you're in it quite deep, and you're here.
What happened after the publication of the current book, Confiscation of Armenian Properties? What was the reaction in both, from Armenians and particularly from Turkey and the Turkish community generally in Europe?
Yeah, from the Turkish community in Europe, I haven't heard anything yet. The response from Turkey was mixed. There was a good response from a small group of committed intellectuals and student and university staff and some journalists. Very positive. On the other hand, undoubtedly, there's going to be a very negative backlash as well. But of course, if people would listen, or even better yet, read the book, then they might want to change actually what they think, because the book, I think, is actually not that negative about Turkey at all. So the book is currently being translated into Turkish. So only when it starts, selling in the Turkish bookshops, and when people start reading it in Turkish, that's when we can really ask and also answer this question. Yeah.
So the work is not complete, obviously, because the work on genocide studies is never complete. What's next?
Indeed, the work is never complete. Well, I'm the graduate director at the Institute for War and Genocide Studies in Amsterdam, and I continue to teach on genocide, because writing a book is one thing, but you also have to communicate it not only to a wider audience like here, but also to students who are not necessarily Armenians or Turks, and try to convey the importance of the Armenian genocide not only to Turks or Armenians, but to everyone. This is a regional catastrophe, and in a way it's also a global catastrophe, so we have to teach it, and that's something that I'm doing now as well, university teaching, and maybe I'm also working on another book that deals with genocide in a more general perspective. So genocide as a phenomenon, and how can we understand also the aftermath of genocide. Transitional justice, for example, is an interesting field. So the work is never complete, and it always continues.